a bit more detail on what we're covering in today's lesson. It's about email marketing. We're looking at the important email marketing stats that are very good to know, email requirements and best practices, list creation, segmentation and optimization, and avoiding spam and email clipping. If you don't understand some of these terms yet, don't worry, you will by the end of this lesson. So what is email marketing? Email marketing is the act of sending a commercial message, typically to a group of people using email. In its broadest sense, every email sent to a potential or current customer could be considered email marketing. Looking back at the first marketing email, that was sent in 1978, so not actually that long ago. A guy named Gary, a marketing manager for DEC Machines, which was a company selling computer hardware and software, sent an email to 400 users via ARPANET. ARPANET was the network that became the basis for the internet. Of course, with it being the first email, it was a completely new concept, and it resulted in $13 million in sales. Pretty crazy. Email isn't going anywhere, despite the fact that almost every week there is a new article about the death of email. To put it in a little perspective, platforms like Slack, I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but they've become very popular for business or team communication. And that one, which is one of the most popular ones, is at about 10 million monthly active users. In comparison, there are 4.4 billion email users. That is more than 50% of the entire population of the world. In 2019, the prediction was that 293.6 billion emails would be sent. And by the end of 2023, well, you can see there on the screen, it's just set to increase. Now, this year, email ad spend hit $350 million. And I know that if we look at this spend compared to other digital marketing channels, it's not very high, but there are valid reasons for that, which we will get into just now. But 93% of B2B marketers use email to boost their content. 73% of millennials use email for business. Millennials are a hot topic at the moment. And 99% of consumers check their personal email at least once per day. The revenue generated by email marketing is pretty astounding. Compared to social media marketing, the average order value per customer is 3 times higher. Of course, social media is still incredibly valuable. I'm not saying that it isn't at all. And in some cases, in ways that we can't actually fully measure, which is why there's still a bit of a sometimes unsurety about social media, but it is a pretty big leap in terms of social media versus email. And then compared to people who don't receive emails on products, people who do spend 138% more. Now, if that's not a compelling reason to send out emails, I don't know what is. Apart from the fact that the ROI, so return on investment of email marketing, is a huge 4,400%. Now, this is also related to the cost of email marketing, which is lower than other forms of marketing, which we saw just now, especially if you are doing it yourself. Even if you're using one or more of the thousands of email marketing automation tools that are out there, the cost per email is in most cases significantly lower than the cost per click in search or costs in social, digital billboards, etc. The top email providers by monthly active users. This is globally, so it might look a bit different if we were to segment it by country or region, but not that much. So first up we have, and I'm sure this is no surprise, Gmail. It's 1.5 billion monthly active users. They completely dominate the market, except for in China, where Gmail and all Google products are banned. Stats look very different here. In fact, it's a completely different game if you are looking to advertise in China. But moving on. If we look at India, which after China is the most populated country, then Gmail still dominates. So it does still hold true. Their domination is even more evident when you see that second on the list is Outlook. That's Microsoft with 400 million users, and that's not even half the amount of Gmail users. And lastly, we have Yahoo Mail with 288 million users. So despite the fact that there are thousands of different email service providers, I would recommend that when it comes to design and requirements, that you place the majority of your focus on these three providers, unless you know that you are targeting others. The percentage of others is actually, of course, something you can easily check by having a look at your email lists, and we will get into that in terms of email lists just now. So let's be honest, we all know what an email is, and we all have an email address. You used it to sign up for this course. But emails aren't just text-based like these marketing email examples here. I wanted to include these to show you that marketing emails don't have to be full of brilliant creative designs, videos and GIFs, etc. They can be as simple as a text email like this. The example on the left is a request to complete a survey so that the business can get a better idea of who its customers are. There is absolutely no need for fancy imagery. And then the example on the right is a notification of a new blog post. Now, I'm not going to break these down right now, but before the end of the lesson, let's get back to them and go through what could potentially be changed or improved when it comes to these two. Now, here we have an email from a men's grooming company called Harry's. The woolly mammoth, that's super cute, is their mascot, for lack of a better word. This is a welcome email that is sent after someone submitted their email address. Its design is very simple, and I really like the way that they add a fun fact about mammoths at the end of their email. Grammarly also used a simple design here, and this is an email sent to people who have taken up their free trial, and it's offering them a discount on their premium membership. They include a testimonial or review at the bottom, which is quite a nice touch. And then we have here Birchbox, which is a subscription service. They started trending a few years ago, and it's definitely not showing any signs of stopping. Here the design is quite busy. And here we have a promotion email with one so-called strong image taking up the bulk of the email. The most important thing when it comes to email marketing is to adhere to data protection and privacy laws. If you don't and you get caught, the worst case is that you'll be bankrupted by fines, and the best case is that your reputation suffers. So not great either way. There's no one law that governs the whole world when it comes to this, but the laws that they are have many similarities. For example, there's the Data Protection Act in the UK and the CAN-SPAM Act in the US. These laws are updated quite frequently, as laws go, I guess. For example, in 1998, the Data Protection Act was updated to include that all emails must have an opt-out, which I'll explain now. So first up, opt-in. You need to have received verbal or written permission to include consumers in your email lists. For example, when someone is on your site and creating an account, you need to include a checkbox somewhere for people to agree to receive marketing communications from you. We could spend hours and hours on how many businesses do and don't adhere to this act, but now is not the time. This is what you should be doing, but is not necessarily what is always done. There is a difference everywhere. Likewise, you need an opt-out. I will show you that when we actually look back at the email examples from earlier, those text ones. But in every email, you need to have a link or option where people can unsubscribe, so stop receiving emails from you. And then, of course, you need to honor that. If you are using automation tools, then unsubscribes will be handled for you. You know, in email fields, you have the from, to, the CC, the BCC, etc. So the from needs to accurately represent your business, as does the email address that you're sending from. For example, let's say your company is onlinedevelopment.com. Your email address should be name@onlinedevelopment.com. Or if you don't have your own website yet, then onlinedevelopment@gmail.com as an example. And then, of course, your actual website domain, if you have one, needs to match as well. Your subject line needs to accurately reflect the content of the email, but more on that just now. And your location, a registered postal address, whether you have a company address or not, needs to be included at the bottom of every email. I will show this to you in the example as well a bit later. But if you are still working from home, for example, you still need to include that address at the bottom. Moving on to subject lines. So the rest of your email doesn't matter if no one opens it, right? And what is the biggest influence of that? It is subject lines. Many people look at the subject line first and then who it is from, and then other people do it, the other way around. You can very easily find a bajillion articles on advice for the best subject lines to use. Things like including numbers, using scare tactics, sales triggers, etc. I'm not going to go through that now because, again, it's very subjective. But we will go through the things I know to be true, no matter what you're doing. So first up is maximum characters. There's technically no subject line character limit. It's not like a Google ad where you have 30 characters and literally can't include any more. But it is a good idea to keep it below 50 characters so that your subject line doesn't get cut off. The fancy word for this is truncated in the email preview, and you'll see an example of that just now. You need to be using correct language. And I mean, honestly, this is true for all writing. I remember a while ago, businesses were encouraged to use shortened or abbreviated words to kind of fit in with their target audience. While using colloquial language, so words that are used in ordinary or familiar conversations is a good idea. Replacing, let's say, TO, so two, with the number 2, or the letter U for YOU, just looks lazy and unprofessional these days. So don't sacrifice this for a shorter subject line length either. Then comes personalization. Including the first name of someone in the subject line is personalization in its simplest form. We'll get into this a bit more just now, but personalization is possible through segmentation. Again, hold on a sec for this, although we have spoken about segmentation a few times before, and then provided information. So basically, you can't say, I'm going to include the consumer's place of work in my email if you didn't request this info, their company name, when they signed up, or with other communication that you send out. And then for many reasons, the subject line needs to match the body of the email. But this is for a common sense reason, so to speak. How annoyed would you be if you received an email that subject was top 10 ways to boost your business online? But then the content was actually an article on traditional advertising, or there were only 5 tips and not 10. Sure, your open rates, so the number of people who opened your email divided by the number of emails sent would be high, but this metric alone is pretty useless. Something very common in subject lines is the use of emojis. And while on average they have been shown to increase open rates, please be careful with them. These examples are from my Gmail inbox, and about 7 of 10 promotional emails I receive include emojis. I'm not going to go through each one, but I will say that while some of them are very clear, like if you look the second last one, the 90% discount on laptops, Apple Watches, AirPods, etc., that's quite clear. But then others like the third one and the last one, they're a bit, I don't know what they are. I don't know what they're trying to signal. I guess I can see it now, but I don't use them a lot, so I don't understand it. And it actually just looks a bit strange. Apart from sometimes not being able to distinguish what they are, like I was just going through, if you're going to go with slightly meta emojis, so as in not a picture format of exactly what you're talking about, you need to know that emojis can mean different things to different people. And while you can't cater for every individual, you can do a bit of research into your target audience and whether there are any things like this that you should rather avoid. And remember that you can and should always test. Okay, so back to email personalization. What does this mean exactly? Email personalization is targeting an email to a specific subscriber by leveraging the data and information that you have about them. Some personalization options are only available if you are using an email marketing or automation tool to create, send, and manage your email campaigns and lists. We can't spend much time on the how-to of personalization without me delving into these email marketing tools, of which there are a ton. And while the gathering and let's say the storage of the information needed for personalization should be pretty similar, how you implement these tactics can differ a lot. And after doing a bit of research and deciding on the tool that you would like to use, if that's the way you want to go, there will be tutorials and support offered on their side. With that said, though, we will be going through some specific automation tools in modules 3 and 4 when we cover topics like e-commerce and enterprise level campaigns. So some examples of personalization, there are name. We've gone through this. It's very basic. I think we've all seen it in our inbox. An email that either starts with our name, like Dear Laura, or the subject line might include it, like Laura, take advantage of our limited offer. Then last purchase. You can customize the content of your email based on the person's last purchase or purchases. This could be advertising accessories related to the purchase, other relevant products in the same category, for example, technology. And this can be done with or without marketing automation, but it's obviously much easier to do if it's handled automatically once you do the initial setup. I imagine that you would only do this manually if you were just starting out, or you had a small customer base or a small amount of products. This is where segmentation would come in, and more on that in a sec. Likewise, you can include their location in the actual copy of the email or tailor your offering based on their location. For example, if you have multiple stores, if you're having events in specific locations as well. Then engagement, you can send your loyal customers, and here loyal could actually mean different things. For example, the number of purchases or how long they've been a subscriber for. You could send them something different, so like an exclusive offer to thank them for their loyalty. And you can also entice people who haven't yet bought from you with a different offer. Then dynamic content, this is something only really achievable with automation. But of course, an automation tool, and I need to stress this, will only work effectively if it has been set up properly. That's why I'm not doing this lesson, or this whole course couldn't cover all the email marketing tools available in terms of how to use them. More than the standard personalization, like first name, company name, location, etc. Again, this is info that you would have requested from your subscribers when they opted into receiving your emails. Anything else over and above that is not possible without segmentation. Segmentation, just to recap on that, I know it's been brought up a few times in the course so far, but in this case, it's breaking subscribers into smaller groups based on specific criteria so that you can send more personalized and relevant emails. So email segmentation. But segmentation means the same thing no matter what channel we're looking at. Let's go through a quick example. What we have here on the left is an Excel sheet of a subscriber list. Please note this is a dummy list that I've created. If any names look like yours, it's completely coincidence. I have a funny story about that, but now it's not the time. This is something that you can have whether you are starting out by sending emails from your own address like Gmail, or if you're using an email marketing platform like MailChimp. or with a custom built solution, so directly from maybe your WordPress site or from your site in the back end. The differences being that this list would be automatically updated versus manually. And of course, it might look a bit different, fancier, or, various different things. There might be drop downs and filters that you can use, but the principle is the same. So this list is a pretty basic list that someone starting fresh would have initially. The first 3 column details would be info that your subscribers gave you because you asked them. The remaining 2 columns, the source and opt-in date, would be provided by your tracking, which you would absolutely have in place because you remember the importance of tracking from lesson 2 in module 1 and beyond. The opt-in date would either be something you manually tracked, which would only work for very small lists, let's face it, or would be automatically collected from your analytics or whatever tool that you are using. So the available segments that you could create from this so-called master list could be a free trial segment, a blog post segment, the email service provider, and the opt-in month. So this is just an example. I wouldn't necessarily create a separate email list based on service provider or opt-in date, but here it depends on the needs of the business and exactly what you would plan to do differently with each list. And this is where strategy would come in. Strategy is laced into this entire course, but you still need to do your own research and thinking. Some examples of lists that you could create, providing that you have the required info saved. First up is new subscribers. You could send a welcome email to all new subscribers, like that Harry's example that we looked at earlier. Then preferences, for example, subscribers who only want to receive new blog notifications, or only sale notifications, or only 1 email per week. All these options are things you would need to include in your opt-in process. Then interests. Let's say that you have different categories on your site. You create lists for each category. People who buy from the tech category, people who read the monthly industry update blog, etc. Then location, that's another option. It's a great one for events, and you don't necessarily need to ask for this info if you're using analytics or an email marketing platform that would track that. Then open rates. This ties back to the engagement personalization. So personalization and segmentation are linked completely. You could save a list with the criteria of when they last opened an email from you. You can also include frequency. So they last opened an email 2 weeks ago, and since they've subscribed, they have opened 20 emails. Lead magnets, and what I'm referring to here is what made them a subscriber. Do you have a strategy where different content topics and formats are used for different targets? And this is where source would come in from my previous example. There we had free trial and blog post. Let's say you're into recipes and someone gave you their email address to download healthy recipes, and another did it for cake recipes. You can send them different content based on this. It's a simple example. Then cart abandonment. I've called it cart abandonment, which makes it sound like it's just for online or e-commerce. But even it could be just, the page before someone submits a lead or requesting a quote or something like that. You have a list of those people, and then you entice them back with a reminder or a discount on the next purchase or whatever it is related to your business. Let's take a look at that Grammarly email again. Here it is an email offering a 40% discount to someone who's taken out the free trial, and it's in an offer for their premium plan. Now, I can't confirm the strategy because I don't work for Grammarly, but they could have created segments of their free trial users split by how frequently they use it. So they could have more frequent users and then less frequent users. Now, more frequent users would be a reliable indicator that someone is getting value out of it. And then less frequent use could mean the opposite. There are other factors involved, of course, like user friendliness and all of that. But anyway, what they could be trying, or would be a nice idea, is a price discrimination strategy. So people who are using it more might be willing to pay more to keep it. So you would offer them a lower discount. They see more value in the product, so they might be willing to pay more. And then less frequent users, you offer them a higher discount. So you're not making as much, or they're not making as much, but they're still securing that person. And they could, of course, then increase their value over time. There are ways of increasing your email lists, of course. So it doesn't always have to be this amazing blog post or this incredible white paper or book or anything like that. It can be quite simple. Essentially, you need to be offering someone value in order for them to be willing to give you their information. So as I've just said, to increase your email lists, the tactics that you need to use to do so need to be effective. And to be effective, whatever you offer them in return for their personal info needs to be easily consumed. Ask yourself whether you would read a 200-page case study. I know I definitely wouldn't. The lead magnet that you give someone in return for their information needs to be bite-sized in length and in format. So it needs to be easy to download, and it needs to not be a crazy long novel, unless people are obviously wanting a novel. It also needs to be actionable, and by that I mean for the consumer. And it needs to be a tool or a skill or useful information that the person can use. And then it also needs to be or offer a noticeable difference. The truth is that if what you've offered them creates a noticeable difference, so an amount of their purchase or the application of your advice made a difference in their personal or professional life, then, as I mentioned, people will continue to buy from you and remember you. Ideally, it needs to be as valuable as the end product or service that you're wanting them to purchase. And remember here that value is not just related to money. It obviously needs to be relevant to the consumer as well as to your business. Someone selling bathroom sinks isn't going to create a lead magnet around recipes. Someone selling cars isn't going to be promoting the value of cycling to work. It's just counterintuitive. And then finally, it needs to be available instantly. As soon as they've given you their information, they need to receive whatever it is that you have offered them. Maybe it's an email with a link to download. Maybe it's a promo code visible on the site as soon as they've submitted. There are many options. Now, as I've said before, I'm not going to go through a range of templates to use for your emails. This is something you need to research, knowing your goals far better than I do on this side of the screen. But no matter what template you use, the following things do need to be considered. First up, you know how important mobile is. And a study found that over 68% of people view marketing emails on their mobile. If you're using an email marketing platform and templates, they will be responsive automatically. If you're designing your email, you need to bear in mind that what looks great on desktop won't look great on mobile. Then negative space, it's not a bad thing. Don't fill up the whole email with text and images. There are two kinds of negative space. We have active white space, which is intentional space placed to emphasize aspects of the email and guide the eyes to read from one element to another. And then there's passive white space, and this is the edges of your email and the empty sections in the body of your email. Now, if you look on the right here, there's a Pinterest email. The green sections are passive space and the red sections are active space. It looks pretty crazy busy because all of these things have been highlighted. This is not my image. This is from a Vertical Response. But just imagine, that's to illustrate the active and the passive white space. Without those spaces there, it would actually just be too busy. It wouldn't look appealing at all. Very important is clean typography, fancy word for font. You can see here how awful it looks if you use multiple different fonts. You need to stick to, or ideally stick to, one font for the body and another for the headings. That's all you really need. So it needs to be clean. and it needs to follow that visual hierarchy. And what I mean by that is that your headings should be bigger than the body of the text. In this example, that is what is being followed. Fonts like Arial, Roboto, and Times New Roman are what they call web-friendly fonts. These fonts won't distort or change on different devices, whereas others might. You need to use color wisely. Now, this isn't a design lesson, so I'm not spending time here, but when choosing colors to do your research, look at complementary colors. Monochromatic colors are generally safest or look the cleanest, but it might not be in line with your brand, and that's of course okay. But for example, you don't want your two main colors to be red and green. If you're not sure why that is, please look it up. They do not work well together. Maybe on a Christmas tree. Then consider using icons to minimize text. The same considerations that you give to emojis need to be applied here, but there are some accepted kind of standard icons, like social media icons. On the left here, have those instead of typing out the words of the social media platform, for example. Then there's contact number that's generally accepted as a phone. Then you've got email address, website, location, currencies, etc. These are mostly understood. And in the few cases where they wouldn't be, the information provided next to them would make sense. There are certain trigger words, and I'm going through them now, that if you include in your subject line could be seen as spam. The operative word is could be. I'm just imagining receiving emails now to say, but Laura, I received an email with 100% in it the other day. Using these words doesn't necessarily mean that you will definitely be in a spam folder, but there are potential triggers because they are used by real spammers, and they're used by real spammers because unfortunately in that case they work. There are hundreds and hundreds of words that are deemed spam trigger words, but these are the top words. Then other things that you need to look at in order to avoid the spam folder: don't use all capitals for words, and I mean single words as well as sentences, of course. Exclamations, too many of those is a no-no, especially in the subject line. As well as attachments. I think that's possibly the biggest one, and I think quite obvious, but just to make sure, don't include attachments in your email. Many people have been, their accounts have been cleaned out, their personal information's been stolen by them opening a bad or a spammy attachment. Also, you need to be wary of links. Don't shorten them, not even from a spam perspective, although that obviously is a concern, but from a personal perspective, people don't like to click on links where it looks like they don't know where they're going. Where if it's just a bunch of random characters and numbers, that's not great. You also need to try and keep your email as short and sweet as possible. And then red font, that's also quite a big no-no. Including red font in the body of your email can be picked up, or can mean that it is picked up as spam. Whether you use automation tools or not, you need to have someone physically looking through your lists at regular intervals. I'd say start with a schedule of every 3 months, but as you increase, check them more regularly. Automation, I think it's been made pretty clear. I'm not fully sold on all of it. I think it is amazing, but it's not the savior of marketing. Many mistakes can still be made, and simple things can be missed. First, though, you need to understand a little bit more terminology. First up, we have soft bounces, and a soft bounce is a temporary delivery issue. Now, reasons for a soft bounce would be a full mailbox, the server might have been down, or the message might have been too large. Now, automation software would continue to send the email in question until it was delivered. And if you were doing it manually, you would need to keep trying to send it. And moving on to hard bounces, these are emails that will never, ever, ever deliver. Reasons for a hard bounce could be a wrong email address, so either intentional or by mistake. a non-existent domain, the company may be shut down or changed domains or many other reasons, or a server blocked delivery. There could be security policies in place that you can't control, and other reasons as well. The steps that you would need to take to clean your lists would be to look at the hard and soft bounces, check for any typos and fix any of those. For example, someone could have put or incorrectly spelled Gmail instead of, correctly, like switching a few letters around. Then you would need to remove the hard bounces and continue to send to the soft bounces. You need to remove your unsubscribes if this hasn't been done automatically. With unsubscribes, you can't actually only leave this to a quarterly activity if you do it manually. It needs to be done daily, or at least before it's time to send your next email. Duplicates, you can check for duplicates and remove them. This can be done in Excel. Automation tools just can pick it up. Or you could prevent this completely and implement code on your site that doesn't allow someone to subscribe more than once with the same email address. That's a pretty handy thing to do. I would recommend it if you can. Spammy email addresses. These are quite obvious to see. I'm sure you've seen them before. They're a bunch of random characters. So let's say 9781433w@gmail.com. No one creates email addresses like this. But if you aren't sure, there are various free email verification services that you can use to check individual addresses. Bulk checking gets a bit trickier. But moving on, I did mention typos earlier. This can apply to email domains as well as names that you can clearly see are spelled incorrectly. If you are using an email marketing tool, then you'll have data on when your subscribers last interacted with your emails, or you would have created a segment of these users. But before you remove them, you could try to hook them in one more time. You could send these people an email asking them if they still want to hear from you. You make the subject line very clear. You could say, we've noticed you haven't checked in a while. Would you still like to hear from us? Don't make it salesy. That will just put people off. And ask for a simple yes or no reply. Then remove the no's. Don't waste your time here on these people. No offense to them at all. I don't mean it horribly. And then with the yeses, try and get them to engage more by offering them a thank you discount or something valuable. Even if you are checking your lists regularly, you should, of course, be monitoring your metrics. Signs that things could be going haywire with your lists are lower open rates than you have previously seen. If your link CTR, click-through rate, is also lower, as in the percentage of clicks on links that you include in your email is lower, then this could indicate a problem. An increase in spam complaints, and this is different to your email being put in the spam folder. It's people marking your email as spam, as we touched on a bit earlier. And then higher bounce rates. You would be seeing this in your analytics. If you're using a platform, it would be within that. If you're using Google Analytics and proper tracking, then you would be able to see it that way. If you are seeing these problems, before panicking about the quality of your content, I'd say that the first port of call is to check the email itself for any obvious bugs or errors. Maybe there's some missing links, the subject line or the body displayed strangely. Those are easy fixes. Then I would check your lists, and only then, if nothing improves, I would start worrying about your content. Depends on the turnaround time of this. Obviously, you want to be as quick as possible. So look at all three at the same time if you can. But don't immediately panic and think that it's your content. Now, something very important is to avoid email clipping. Now, Gmail clips emails that have a message size larger than 102 kilobytes. That's really not large at all, but at the end of the day, it's just an email, and it hides the full content behind a view entire message link. It's like on social. We've all seen the continue reading or see more on a long status update. Why would you want to avoid email clipping? You can see an example there on the right side of the screen. There's some very good reasons for this. Firstly, ask yourself, how many of you would click to read the full message? It also affects your tracking. Most senders, email senders, providers, place the open tracking pixel at the bottom of their message to avoid any spacing issues. So if it hasn't fully loaded, then your open rates will be skewed. They won't be accurate. And if you have any important links in the body of your email, then of course they won't be seen either. And then the required unsubscribe link can't be seen if your message is clipped, meaning that you're not obeying the data protection laws. Complete these steps to avoid email clipping. They're also good steps to take to optimize your emails, meaning better performance overall. Use hyperlinks. Don't include your full blog post in your email. Include an enticing sentence or two, not more, and then add a link to read more. I know this might sound contradictory to what I just said earlier, but here you aren't adding in a long piece of content and then adding a read more link. It is a strategy here to entice traffic to your site and helps keep your email size low. Limit the message of each of your emails to one. It might be tempting to reach your entire target audience in one email, but this is why segmentation is valuable. If you're just starting out, then this doesn't apply. And if you're in retail, I'm not saying only include one product image, but don't talk about your normal sales and then add a promotion. The promotion can be a separate email, for example. Subject lines, another reason for them to be unique. Gmail sometimes combines emails with the same subject line into the same thread, increasing the size and then, of course, making the email easier to miss. Then formatting. Let's say you write your content in a Word doc. You then copy paste it into your email template. Don't do this. A good habit to adopt is to first paste your text into Notepad. This is the free program that is available on every computer on the planet. Maybe for Mac users, it's called something else. Taking your copy from wherever you've written it and pasting it into Notepad will remove all the formatting and what is called dirty code, which is otherwise invisible and can increase the size of your mail. Mentioned this before, but don't shorten your URLs. This could get you into the spam folder, but it also messes with the code of the email, or can mess with the code of the email a little bit. Then something good to know is that reducing the size of your image doesn't reduce the size of your email. So rather take an image out completely if you are over the limit, or you think, maybe it's just a bit unnecessary. Message size is based on the total number of bytes in the email's code. Images are pulled into emails from an external source, for example, servers. So they're not sitting in the email. They're sitting externally, but being called into the email, so to speak. Changing the image size does not change the code. And if you're not changing the code of your email, you're not changing the size of it. I hope that makes sense. Then when you have completed your email, it's a good idea as well, a nice habit to form, to save it as an HTML file and check the size of it. If it's over 102 kilobytes, then you know that you need to make changes. And then finally, send a test email to yourself as well as a few other willing addresses. So use your friends, employees or colleagues, and check whether any clipping takes place. Now, these steps aren't all 100% foolproof. The code of your email can be so-called used in different ways, depending on the device or the version of the browser, etc. But it definitely helps. What are the best days to send emails? This is from CoSchedule, and they found through 14 different platforms, so quite an extensive study, that number one is Tuesdays, second place is Thursdays, and third place is Wednesdays. Then the best times to send emails. First up, the winner was 10 a.m. Second place is 8 p.m. and third place is 2 p.m. I would love to know, when are you most likely to read an email? Have a think about it. These times aren't exact. So, well, if it's, between 10 and 11, then let's say it's A. Between 8 and 9, B. 2 p.m. or around there, C. And if it's a completely other time, D. If you could pop that into Morpheus, that would be very interesting. Coming up in lesson 4, we are looking at affiliate and influencer marketing. First up, we're going to look at identifying and negotiating opportunities, the different types of affiliate marketing, then implementing a strategy for affiliate and influencer marketing, and measuring results. And while you think about that a bit longer, I'm just going to recap what we've gone through quickly. You need to ask yourself, what value will my subscriber gain from receiving this email? For various reasons, also in terms of the attention span of people these days, try and keep it to 1 message per email. Segment your lists. This is incredibly important. Use unique, clear subject lines for multiple reasons, for spam reasons, for data protection reasons, for open rate reasons, and overall conversion rate. Use correct and concise copy, please. Add a simple design. Don't get too complicated. The simpler, the better in many, many ways. It also reduces the chance of your email looking strange on certain providers. Meet all the requirements in terms of the Data Protection Act's CAN Spam Act or whatever act you have in place based on where you are. Keep your email size to below 102 kilobytes. Send yourself test emails so that you can see, what's going on. It's not 100% foolproof, but it very much does help pick up issues that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Check your tracking. So important. We've spoken about tracking throughout this module, and it's the most important thing. I've probably said that before as well. Without your tracking, you don't know whether what you're doing is effective or not. And then it's almost pointless. So make sure you have that in place. Schedule your list cleaning. Make sure that you don't let it go or let it pass too long between looking at those lists, especially if you're not using an email marketing tool or automation tool. And then test your content constantly, as well as the days and times to send them. Very important. And you could see, significantly different results depending on these things. And don't forget that you can watch recordings of your lessons. Please go back and watch the recordings of this lesson as many times as you need if anything is unclear. Right, now back to those text email examples. First up at the bottom here, you can see that the unsubscribe link is there, as well as the location, which is the requirement by law. Now, how could these emails be changed to potentially improve them? I am one of those people who get sometimes unnecessarily bothered by poor spelling and grammar. So the lowercase subject line here bothers me a little bit. It might have been intentional, but I would have started it with a proper case, so capital C. Or I would have perhaps run a test out of interest to see whether something like that would affect open rates. Here, it's great that Matt is telling Lindsay it would take 2 minutes to fulfill his request, but perhaps an incentive could be added for Lindsay. Even if it is 2 minutes, she might not be feeling generous with her time, especially as she's not currently getting anything out of it. So offering an incentive, something like maybe a 5% discount off a purchase, and if you don't want to do something like that, access to maybe an exclusive list where she'll be notified first about new blog posts, or maybe to go into a draw to win a prize, many other different small incentives that can increase response rates on things like surveys quite hugely. Then looking at the next email, personalization could have been used here instead of just saying, hey. I'm not trying to criticize these emails and these things. at all. That's not the point. They could have been tried already, but we don't know, so we get to judge. Instead of hyperlinking, click to continue and click here, more descriptive words could be used. I have a feeling that this is either an old email or a test, as Neil Patel, the sender of this email, is a very experienced and successful thought leader in the marketing industry. But Federal Trade Commission could have been hyperlinked, and in the one below that, the one that's still highlighted, it could have been grow your traffic and revenue that was hyperlinked to the article he is